I think community is an inconvenience for everybody. People just don't go looking for a community. They have a problem and they want a solution. And if the transformation is truly crazy enough that people are going to overcome that inconvenience and be a good member, welcome to the School Scaling Podcast. My
Mm,
host is Arton. The guest is me. And today we're going to talk about the importance of proof in entrepreneurship, right?
pretty good. Yeah.
That's pretty good? Yeah? So, we were just
Well, let me
talking.
s let me throw some proof out there.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Employee number 1 at Monday.com, which is now a multi-billion dollar company, where you hired and ran a team of 87 people around customer success. Now you're building a school community and software around it that gets community owners more high quality members who also pay more. Go ahead.
Dude, I got the check's in the mail. Thanks, man. Um, we were talking about just the joys, I say joys and joys, with air quotes, of entrepreneurship right before we hopped on the actual recording. And let's think about this in the realm of, like, this is how my wife always thinks about stuff, right? Which is, what would make the better movie? She's a film producer, right? She's got a history of doing that. She made a lot of short films when she was out producing in Argentina. Really good stuff. But she likes to think about things about, like, what's gonna make the better movie. And I think that is just such a great lens to look at things through, because what you're talking about right now, you are going to think that this is the good old days. You never realize the good old days in the middle of it. You need somebody who's old like me to go and tell you these are the good old days. Like, I promise you. Um, but that's what happens. And there's never been a great story that starts with, and they had a silver spoon, everything was handed to them, and they struggled for nothing. No, who cares about that story? Nobody cares about that story. Nobody likes that story. There's a show that's been making the rounds that everybody's talking about. You could we could have a different discussion over whether it's a good show or not. It's called Pluribus, and it makes you ask questions about, like, what does happiness mean? What does world peace mean? I like that it asks those questions. I've got other issues with it, but I like that it makes you think about those kind of things. And yeah, I think a good way to start this conversation off is that the struggle of entrepreneurship is you've got to kind of learn to love the pain, and it doesn't have to be painful. Well, I don't even know if that's true. I think it does have to be painful, to a degree. But basically, like, people sometimes end up in entrepreneurship because they're pursuing their passion or something that they love. But the reality of entrepreneurship is that you have to wear every hat, not just the hat you want to wear. And yeah, when it comes to selling your stuff, you got to have proof and trust. Otherwise, people aren't going to buy it and give you that life that you're chasing. So that's my intro.
And the podcast.
And yeah, there it is.
Shortest podcast in history. Why do you have to have the proof?
The reason why is because, like, to go back to the existential conversation, right? People, you can't live on your own. It's impossible, right? Um, we live in a society, but there's you have to interact with other people, and to interact with other people, you will realize that people have quality, like, they have quality amongst them, and there are people of a certain degree of quality, and you'll get very, like, wildly different experiences. You know, you might get, like, the worst experience of your life at a fine dining restaurant, and you might get the best experience of your life at a food truck outside of a gas station. And why is that? Well, there's varying degrees of it, but you would think that you trust the fine dining restaurant more. They've got more history, more experience, they're more established, right? But the way that humans interact with one another is there is always an unknown, right? I know you now. Like, we've met in person, I know you, and so I trust you more, and you trust me more. And that makes buying easier. Charlie Munger said it best. Trust is like the single greatest economic force in business. So why do you have to have it? Because if you don't, your business won't succeed. Nobody's going to give you something that they spent time, money, blood, sweat, and tears to earn unless they trust that they're going to get a result. You might have people take a leap, but it's going to be a very small percentage. Whereas if they trust you, instead of having uh, one person out of 1,000, you could have two or 300 people out of 1,000 that actually choose to engage with your business. And who wouldn't want to have two or 300x the conversion rate? Which, speaking of Skool, like I know and have worked with Skool owners. Shout out to the folks that know who they are, that are making 50 to 100 grand a month, and they have a 0.1% conversion rate on their about page. Imagine if that was point 0.2. Imagine, imagine, right? What's the average
Great.
across all of them for paid communities? I think it's like
4%
3
for
or 4.
paid, and
Yeah.
then 20% for free.
I don't know the math on 0.1 to 4% improvement, but that's insane.
Mhm.
And this person's making over between 50 to 100 grand a month right now on the platform. So why trust? I would love to make more money with the same amount of effort or less. That's why.
Makes sense. And for context, I guess for the people, how are you helping other people do that?
Through a variety of ways, but the main one is through a website called proveworth.com. And that is just a
Smart name.
mechanism. Thank you. Thank you very much. My wife came up with it. That is just a mechanism to force people to think about kind of one of the biggest problems that they have, which is gathering social proof and doing so on autopilot while also establishing trust with strangers. And you can think about it like a trust pilot or a Yelp, but with more community focused, and people question the ethics of those places. For example, yesterday we just put out an update, um, because we're a two-sided marketplace, right? We have users that are looking for groups, and we have people that have groups and want people to utilize them. And Proofworth is designed to help both of those people make informed decisions. The whole mission was, let's make reviews honest and easy for everybody. Shout out Jeff Lopez for that amazing tagline. He's the multi-time Skool game winner. I think he's about to hit 100 grand a month right now with his community, which is insane. And yeah, people just go on to Proofworth. Community owners, they go and make a profile. They click on the link and copy it and paste it and share it with their communities. And they can easily get reviews that then allow existing members to kind of feel more ingrained with the value of the community, and they allow new potential prospects to see that you're legit and that you're actually doing really valuable things for people. And we've got all kinds of awesome communities on there. One of my favorites is a guy named Henry Hunter leading the Crust and Crumb Academy. And, this dude is crushing it. He's getting like reviews constantly with beautiful pictures of bread and sourdough and all this other stuff. But that's the joy of communities. That's the joy of it. So yeah, Proofworth is the main mechanism that we use. And then we have a community that's kind of themed around it as well. And that's something that I need to work more on and better understand. But the goal of that community right now is that, when people have a customer journey and they're thinking, or they don't have a customer journey and they're trying to think through how do they get the proof, how do they maximize the opportunity that it gives them, the community is a great way to discuss that. But it's also a place where people come in and they ask about feature requests. We fix bugs, all sorts of stuff. So it's kind of like a user forum.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And then diving more into detail, I guess, I feel like a lot of people throw out the word testimonial. when talking about
Mhm.
proof. So do you have like an exact definition of what that is?
Yeah, I would say a review is something where you don't have control over the outcome, right? And a testimonial is where an existing user shares about their experience and you kind of curate and collect how that's presented to people. So it's controlled by you. And they both are valuable and they both have their place. Most people have if you go and look at pretty much any of the 190,000 whatever school communities that are out there, the vast majority of people have they have testimonials that basically look like a review. It's like a screenshot of a tiny piece of feedback. And what a good testimonial does is, and this is was my entire job at Monday. I built an entire department around this. Was testimonials are actually really, really powerful in many ways. Not only do they do the thing where they help people convince you to buy, but one of the best things that they can do is actually convince the person giving them that you are more valuable. And you didn't do anything, by the way. You just kind of forced them to go and think through the process of why they joined, what they got out of it, right? So it kind of sinks the clause deeper in a respect. So I would define a testimonial as a curated um it's like a curated opinion that somebody gives that you can present to potential members, understanding that you control the message because it's about you. So you're going to have people say the nice things about it.
Hmm.
Whereas a
Interesting.
review would be an objective kind of third party instance. And they both have their place and they're both very, very powerful.
Interesting. I actually never thought about the instead testimonial versus review. I feel like with a testimonial, it's almost like at the end of a sales call where you ask the person why they like what you just told them. It's just later on in the customer journey.
Exactly right.
And in terms of testimonial versus reviews, could you speak on where their place is?
Absolutely. So I would say that reviews are going to be that foundational layer. And testimonials, like you also pointed out accurately, are going to be a little bit further down the funnel. And this really depends on where that person is in their own journey of potentially buying your product or service. But a review is going to be something where that's what somebody wants to look at first, generally. Why? Because it's considered more objective, right? If you can't control, if I have my reviews out there and I have no control over what those say, where they're placed, right? People generally type in uh, several things, and I've seen this in the data. Like this has been, and you've probably already also done this. They type in is XYZ legit, best XYZ, or XYZ reviews. It's almost always one of those, or a variation of those three things. And so reviews are that kind of like top of funnel, like let's make sure they're trustworthy. And then when they want more details and context, the testimonial is the perfect thing because those generally dive much deeper. They talk about the before, they talk about the after, they talk about the actual transformation, they talk about the journey itself, they talk about the destination. So a testimonial will reinforce kind of that first opinion. But reviews are very important that you form a good first opinion. And by the way, if you just have all positive reviews, that's fine, right? If you're generally smaller, but it actually works in your favor to have some reviews that are not as positive and to have your reply to those reviews. Because guess what? You've probably experienced this. Many of the listeners have probably experienced this. Not every customer is going to be perfect. I talked about a feature that I released earlier, and I didn't finish my thought. But the thing that we just published was when somebody goes and leaves a review for a community, there's now a new kind of like dynamic change that happens based off of what star they give it. So if somebody gives it a 5-star rating, they're going to get a different experience than if they give it a 1-star rating. This is something I always kind of personally felt like was important. And so they still go and create the same end result. They still create a review, But one of the things that I noticed for the people that were getting reviews that were quote unquote more negative was that they wanted to or were able to resolve those things that people were concerned about. So now, if somebody leaves like a 1, 2, or 3 star review, there's a new button that pops up. It has their name filled out already, it has everything filled out. And it's just like, do you want to try to resolve this with the community owner before you post it? Just one little thing, right? And what does that actually signal? Well, I still encourage people. The form still says, "Hey, still leave the review," right? But like, you can result. Like, do you want to work to resolve this with the person so that you can edit it later or change it? Um, and I think that is in best serve. I believe that that is in best service of everybody because if somebody joins a community and in 5 minutes realizes it's not a good fit, that I think could still be a valuable review for somebody to say, "Hey, this wasn't a fit for me, and here's why." And have that owner still be able to give a reply to people, and show them. So you're talking about where in the journey does this matter the most? Um, I think having a review where somebody clearly shows that they're not a fit and why, even if they give you a 1 star rating, is still very, very valuable. And as you mentioned, some of my proof, right? I had experience working at Monday. We got thousands of negative reviews, right? But of the people that left the hundreds of thousands of really good ones, a bunch of those people actually came back and edited or re-reviewed after we worked with them because we were like, actually, you know what? That's great feedback. Like, yes, we should have had that button there. We should have like made this process smoother. That didn't work, and it's our fault. And so those kind of moments humanize you, and that's I think the ultimate lesson, right? If we were to just end of podcast, shut it off, right? From the beginning of that discussion, it would be really around how do we help humans trust other humans and be more authentic? And that's where the magic is.
Yeah, and I think from everything I just said, you kind of win either way if you decouple the negative review from your ego in a way. Because
Absolutely. Hard to do.
yeah, very hard to do. But I mean, if you take a 20-minute break, then you come back to it and you're like, oh, it's all right. Then you kind of go on from
Exactly.
there. And I've heard the Hormozis talk about this as well, where you can turn your biggest haters into your biggest lovers. And like
For sure.
Sam talk about this and how they would kick some members out, and after they came back in, they were like became the best members in schools. In terms of reviews, as a new community owner or like someone make with already 1,000 members or 10,000 members, does it apply to like everyone? When I'm starting out, should I get them or not? Basically,
Uh, it's a good question. And I think the answer is I'm biased, right? But I would say, even if you have two people in your community, right? Because what's a community? It's at least three folks going on a journey. That's it. Even if you have two people in your community, you still want to try to get reviews from those two people. Because if you care about the topic, if you're willing to stick with it for, a decade or more, if this is something that you're truly passionate about, then you're going to want to grow. Don't we all? Wouldn't we all love to get more opportunities to grow our communities? And to do that, you're going to have more people trust that this journey is worth going on with your group. And how are you going to do that? Got to get more reviews, got to get more testimonials. You got to build on something. So, whether you have a huge community or a community of just you and two other people, I would say it's always worth starting as soon as possible, uh, because you're going to refine your own user journey as this goes on, right? Your own member journey. Um, I ran a survey of my folks that joined the Prove Worth system, of which thankfully we have hundreds of people using the platform now. And 92% didn't have a customer journey at all. They had no customer journey, right? Which, when you're starting out and you're growing, like that's fine. But some of these people were pretty established. Uh, and they're really just focused on getting more people in the door, which is a good and important thing. But once they're in the door, what happens? How do you get them to stick around? Every community, you've heard me say this 1,000 times, right? What does every community need? Needs three things: needs distribution, right? You got to get it out there so people can understand it. You need transformation. You actually need to do what you're saying and do it well. And then you need, what's that mystery third thing? Retention. Because otherwise, you're just making a course, which is fine, but that's not a community. And so if you don't keep people around, if they don't stick around, that's they're not on.
Not good.
Yeah, that's not good. That's not good for the business. And not everybody's going to stay all the time. It's nice, right? But you have to have an important blend of those three things. Otherwise, your community will fail. And reviews and testimonials play a huge part in that. And understanding your customer journey plays a huge part of that. So what I've noticed about Prove Worth that's been fun has been it's a forcing function to say, "Ooh, do I actually have an understanding of like where I want people to go?" Right? Obviously, I want to get them in the door and paying, but then what happens? Okay, well then I want to get them to this point. Then what happens? And what I've noticed is that what I've found is that a lot of people have a loose idea of that, if at all. They're mostly just like, how do I get people to come in and pay? And then they have 50% churn and they're like, why am I not growing? Well, you gotta go through this process. And the funny aspect is that when people leave reviews and they leave testimonials, they are more likely to stick around and they are more likely to pay you more. At Monday, we proved this time and time again. The beauty of a testimonial specifically was not only did it give us marketing material, which was gold, like absolutely gold. It's in the customer's language. It's talking about their specific pain points, all this sort of thing. So it gave us marketing language, but it also gave us, like, we were, hundreds, then thousands of people. It gave us a lot of internal leverage to help everybody else understand what we were trying to do internally. And if you're just yourself, right, this is still a mechanism for you to say, oh, I didn't realize this was what was valuable for you. We have a new feature in the platform as well where we have an AI agent go in and read the reviews every time somebody posts a new one. And it tells you things like what was their pain? What were they struggling with? Why did they purchase from you? It gives you good quotes and understand, like, it helps you better understand your customer. And that helps teach you. And if you have a team, it helps them get on board and understand it. And then we noticed a joyful third thing, which was these people didn't churn as much and they upgraded more. So that's why we built an entire department around it, because it's like, how would I not want to win 4 different times through this effort? Once the founders saw like the clear indications of the data, they were like, we got to build a whole department around this. And a lot of savvy companies have done this, and a lot of communities are not. So that is kind of like the 4 winning aspects of what this process does that you can't afford to ignore. Again, biased, but I'm seeing it in the data.
And diving into the customer journey more, because I found that really interesting. Like, how do I think through that?
The best way to think through a customer journey is
Do you want
to
to define
to
it first?
yeah, I think it's important that we define it. And the simplest version would be, where do people start and where do people end when it comes to your business? I think that would be the simplest version of it, right? All good things must come to an end. But sometimes they choose not to end, which is great. But what is a journey and what is a customer? A journey is an experience that you go on a personal experience to transform. Something is going to happen, right? Like you're either arriving at your destination, so it's like a journey to the grocery store, or it's like, hey, I'm trying to become, a better creative marketer, so I need to learn how to consistently write better ads and go on these things. So I'm going to go from completely ignorant at the beginning of my journey to a media buyer consultancy. Right, that's a journey for sure. So, and then when you put customer in it, what is a customer? Well, it's somebody who trusts you enough to give you money, right? They are engaged with your business and they believe you and trust you. So you have given an exchange of value. They give you money, you give them the ability to go on that journey. So a customer journey ultimately is when people are pre-purchase and post-purchase, what do you want them to do? And you could literally make like a timeline for this. And most people don't, which I think is a critically missed opportunity. And you go through and think about it all the way from start to finish. Here's a 30,000-foot view. I would define a customer journey as how do they discover you? What actions do they take to get into your ecosystem, right? Our LLC is called Digital Gravity because I just love the concept of like people don't just see you and buy from you right away. I wish that would take place, but that very rarely does not take place. What usually ends up happening is they see you and then they subscribe to you and then they listen to you and then they build trust with you and then they see you again and then they forget about you and then they purchase. That's like the 7-point statistical journey that Google discovered. Usually takes 7 different iterations of them seeing you before they end up purchasing with you. And that's the pre-customer journey. But then there's the actual customer journey. Okay, well, welcome to the community. Now you go through the onboarding. Now you actually go through this step in the transformation. You take steps in these course, you share with the rest of these people. Great. Now you become a community leader. You're going to go help other people through this process. You continually go and iterate on this until somebody decides that they have gotten to the place where they want to go and maybe they leave, right? And that's what we call LTV or lifetime value. So you need to understand what your customer's lifetime value is and how you can go about giving them more value so that they exchange more value with you, right? If you give them more value, guess what? They're going to give you more money. That's the beauty of it. Uh, so I would define a customer journey as understanding the entire ecosystem of experience from when they have no clue who you are until they said, "You know what? I've gotten what I need to get out of this, and I've been a part of your $30 a month community now for, several years, and I paid you $660, and that's my LTV." Right? Which is something that for good groups I see frequently, right? It's like a year and a half, 2 years. It's kinda like the common LTV sort of number, um, for like a really good group. Does that help clarify kinda like that
Yeah, that makes a
aspect
lot
of
of
it?
sense. And then inside the customer journey, when do I ask the review?
Ooh, it's a great question. The best time to ask for a review is the second that somebody gets value. And what does that mean? Well, you got to do a little bit of homework yourself on this one, friends who are listening. But let's think about it for you, right? Let's actually go through this experience. How does somebody, let's start from the beginning, actually, because I think this is going to be super helpful. How does somebody discover you?
Me probably on YouTube or Facebook ads or just like in other communities when I engage.
And what do they discover when they discover you?
Discover. Well, they would probably press on my profile. In my profile, I have a bio. The bio says, has some proof, like worked with top school communities.
Mhm.
And then I also have my own community on the left. And that would be the main thing they would discover. And
And
there's
then
also a YouTube link.
how do they identify with what you're saying? Like
What are they
what
actually?
problem would they have that would make them say, "Oh, this is interesting."
Um, Making money on school, but want to scale. That would
Mhm.
be the problem.
What does scale mean?
Scale means just increasing your revenue. You already have
Got it.
revenue and you want to increase revenue.
So they're making generally what, 500 to like 10,000? Like what's the kind of entry point?
Um, I'm fine taking people 0 to 1, but I like working from people that are already at 1. I want to go to 2.
Yeah.
So I would say 3K a month plus.
3K a month. So they're seeing this and they're like, "I'm kind of stuck. I want to grow." How do they go about purchasing from you?
They join the community. There's a free call. They hop on the call. I'm like, hey, your community is good, but it could be better. And then I pitch them. And then if they want to join, they join.
So they join and then what happens? They paid you, you're working together? What's that experience like?
Mhm. That experience is vastly different just because I have different products. But I
Generalize
actually
it.
don't know.
No, no,
It's
it's
very different.
if you were to just generalize it, speak in the form of,
Mhm.
and this is by the way, this is part of the experience, right? Speak in the form of like your ideal kind of client, your ideal scenario.
Sure. Um, we hop on call. There's like an onboarding call. I understand their goals, what's stopping them at that point, and we map out a plan about how to go about it. And then most of the time it's weekly calls, and I just kind of do stuff for them.
Right. So you systematize it and take stuff off their plate. So
Mhm.
what is the value add that you're giving? I have several ideas, but like what's the value add for working with you?
Sure. So they could be community management. So get more engagement, which means you go higher in discovery, which means you get more members, which means
Forget about all the
blah blah
technical stuff.
blah.
Like
And
what's the
then
core of it?
the core of it,
What do they get more of that they didn't
more
have
time.
before? Right? They get more time. People generally buy for several reasons, right? They want health, wealth, relationships, or like time. There's a few different things. But I would say that the mechanisms that you're using are important, but you want to talk more about the outcome, right? And so in your customer journey, this is good for you to understand, but the way that you can kind of use it as marketing material to present to people is you start and before, this is by the way, this is what makes a great testimonial. Before, you're pulling your hair out because you're stressed and you have no time. After, you're sipping Mai Tais on the beach while Arton makes your community explode with growth, right? Right, that's that, and you could think of, and then you go into the details like on your internal customer journey. But do you see how is this kind of a forcing function to make you go through the steps of what happens, right? So somebody's with you for a year. What happens? Do they leave? Do they stay? Why would they stay?
Um, it's really interesting actually. It's just like making me rethink
That's the
almost
beauty of the customer journey. That's the beauty of the
everything.
customer journey. You have to kind of go through these steps. And
Mhm.
again, like there are people out there that have been in business for years that haven't gone through this exercise. So, as somebody who I know is already working and has done great work and is currently trying to like, I know that you're going through these steps right now. I think these are like the most valuable questions you could be asking because guess what? When you work backwards from this ideal scenario, that what does that do? That changes your behavior. So it's been this is what's called customer success, which was the team that I ended up starting at Monday as well. When somebody sticks with you and it's month 9, right? And you want them to renew, why would they renew with you?
I think at 9 months, I would probably well, there's like the look back window as well, right? So it's like looking back at the 9 months and then saying how much they invested versus how much they gained. And then after that, if that's, I think that's almost like fast in their brain. So it's like I can promise everything on this side, right? But it doesn't matter if the experience with me was terrible. So that'd be first, I think. And then it'd be cool. So you got value. And now I'm like part of the community and I make it work and we're scaling. And that'd be the reason they would stay. Because they would expect the same value that they've already gotten just going forward.
I actually just wrote this down because I realized I need to implement this myself. But the behavioral change that I'm gonna make out of this discussion, which is making me realize what's important here, is that, and I was telling you earlier about a scenario where I had this exact thing happen. I need to make some sort of guess or judgment that like, what is the specific ROI?
Hmm.
Here's how I'm thinking about it, and let's think about it for you. Do like just the I live by kind of like two wisdoms, right? If you can't do it, it's probably a skill issue, right? And everything else is math, right? Everything else is math. So what like let's think through this together. Help me out. To get a review generally, how long would you expect that you have to kind of do that? How long would that take you to go from I have no review to I now have a review? Is that like
Mm,
30 minutes maybe? Like, what's a maybe 15
Depends,
minutes?
yeah, depends on a lot of context. I think
'Cause you gotta find the person, you gotta, like,
yeah,
reach out to them, you gotta check up. What would you
I
say
think it
is a
depends
number?
on, for, like, the average community, probably less than a day. I think for a bigger community with, like, 100 members plus, I would say less than an hour.
So, what I'm thinking about now is I'm just gonna say, on average, I'll give people the benefit of the doubt and say it's, like, 15 minutes. Because you think about who
Sure.
you wanna reach out to, right? You reach out to them, you confirm with them, you check with them, but it's 15 minutes spaced out over a long time. But
Yeah.
here's what I'm thinking, right? Is you log into ProveWorth and you look at the reviews that you get, and there's a few calculations that are run, which is like each review taking you 15 minutes. Well, if you have 10 reviews, right? That saved you like a few hours of time. What like an hour and a half or something like that. Um, I'm just trying to think through like what math can I do to show people that this is there, right? Let's say reviews increase your conversion rate by 2%, right? I could have a little calculator up there and it's like, hey, what's the ROI of all these reviews? Well, if they increase your conversion rate by just 2%, you have gained X amount of dollars of MRR or ARR. What's your version of that?
Mm,
What
my
math
version of
can
that
you
would just
do?
be the MMR itself.
But how can you think about it in a way so that you could capture the actual difference that you make? I mean, it's going to be really easy if they're at 3K
Yeah.
and they've been at 3K for 6 months and you join and then they get to 4 and 5 and 6, right?
Mhm.
That's pretty straightforward. But business is never that easy, never that straightforward. There's always going to be market conditions. You're working with owners and they could vary, right? There's all sorts of different circumstances that could change this. Maybe you decide a different ad strategy and it tanks. There's going to be all sorts of different stuff. So you have to also think through, it's not just MRR. What else are you doing for them? You're thinking about the community, you're managing the community. There's cognitive thing like you could say, okay, well, if I'm spending 2 hours a day on this community every day, and you say that, okay, well, and we work together for a month, well, guess what? 2 hours a day times 7 times 4, right? You go through the math and just say, here's the value of this. And the best way that this could possibly work is get them to agree on that number up front. So I need to go to my community and be like, how long does it take you to get a review without proof worth? And I'll get some number. And then I'll say, what conversion rate do you like? I'll get them to go through these
Mhm.
things. This is a very important piece of the customer journey. During onboarding, you need to show people, hey, these are the direct metrics that I'm going to be measuring myself against. And that includes my effort because it's not like you can quantify that as easily. But say, for every 2 hours I'm spending on this community, that's whatever, an hour and a half, an hour, all this time that you're not having to invest into this to make this happen, right? So you want to try to find out what is the simplest and most straightforward path for people. And again, this is a beautiful thing to do for your testimonials too. So they understand what life was like before you and now how irresistible it is after you. So even if you can't think about it right now, I would highly encourage you to think through what and this is how we did everything at Monday, by the way. And we're talking about proof. I wasn't allowed to do any new initiative. I wasn't allowed to start anything until I knew how we were going to celebrate success. And I'm not talking about like a pizza party, some corporate nonsense, right? It was we're going to get X amount of new user growth, X amount of new MRR, X amount of decreased in churn, right? Like, what numbers are we going to specifically celebrate? And as we agreed on those things, what did it do? It forced us to go backwards and be like, okay, well, if that's true, then what has to happen for us to make sure that churn goes down? Okay. We have to get more people into the scaling team and hire better, right? Or in, let's use a community example, right? We want churn to go down. Okay, well, that probably means that we need to actually go and do user interviews and understand why people are churning. Well, what happens when we understand why users are churning? Well, looks like with these could be these two things, right? Maybe the onboarding is not as good. We notice people leave around month 3. Maybe we're not engaging with them as much. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to make a check in on month 2 and say, hey, how's it going? Book a call, right? You see, you're forcing yourself by going backwards to understand what you're celebrating, to say, "This is the behavior that needs to change today," and it just makes, like, a very convoluted, mysterious path, like, that much clearer, right?
Hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Going back one step, I think questioning yourself on those things makes it so clear to you that it makes it clear to everybody else. Because when you were questioning me on it, I was like, man, I have no idea. I need to pick up something on right now.
Well, you have
And
you do have an idea, that's why you
yeah,
started
I
it,
have an idea. It's just not
but it's
clarified.
not. Yeah, exactly right, right? You need the fog to disappear, and
Hmm.
that's what happens is you realize, "Oh," and this is true for every business. You're like, "Oh, damn, this is actually much foggier than I thought."
Yeah. And I think it's just a more general note. Whenever I, whenever you discover concepts that are simple, those are generally the ones that are like the most powerful too.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't know if that made sense, but
The simplest wisdom is often the best, right?
yeah.
And that alone is simple, which
Yeah, just stating the simplest wisdom gets you so far. That makes a lot of sense. And then I guess going back, this conversation's been ever.
yeah, we gotta
Um,
go inverse, dude.
yeah. Quality versus quantity with reviews. Which one's more important?
I love trick questions. Now, I think if I was to only pick one, which I think is the point of this question, I would definitely say quality. Quality matters more than anything. But it's also important that you don't just have one review, you know? Um, but I have seen some reviews on this platform that have, like, shocked me. People have left short novels, right? Like, there's no character limit. There's a character requirement, you have to submit, like, at least a couple sentences. But we give the opportunity to people and, like, they go pretty crazy. Like, usually sometimes, most people leave, like, a few sentences, but I've had some people basically write a short novel about how much they love the community that they're in, or I've had some people write short novels about how much they did not like the community. So it goes both ways. If I had to choose, I would say quality for sure. But you need to respect that. And this is simple wisdom again, right? But you want to look for the mean in everything. Uh, let's think about business right now. If you don't work at all on your business, what happens?
You fail and the business catches fire
Yep.
and bends down and
If
dies.
you work on the business for 16 hours a day, all day, every day without taking breaks, what happens?
You personally die and bend down and then the
You
business
burn
bends
out,
down.
right?
Yeah.
Aristotle talked a lot about this, thousands of years ago. But he talked about the golden mean, which is like if you don't do anything, you're just like a sloth and lazy. But if you do too much, you burn out and you're crazy. And this is true for like everything, right? Let's think about relationships. What happens if you completely ignore a relationship?
You no longer have a relationship.
There you go. What happens if you're obsessed with that person and you're constantly like around them, being with them, trying to talk to them? You never let them get a moment of privacy. What happens to the relationship?
You get a restraining order.
Exactly right. So you see how there's always a mean in the middle where you need to figure out that like this is the balance and the blend for me and for my customers, right? And we all have seasons. Like sometimes you're going to be really really close with somebody and other times you're going to be like let's, where I need some time to myself. You're going to have times where you work like crazy on your business and you're going to have times where you're like I need a break. That's okay. The same thing is true in your reviews. There are gonna be times where you're like, "Hey, I really need some good quality right now to make this review great." And there's other times where you're gonna be like, "Hey, I just need, like, more as well." So you have to find that golden mean for those things. So my answer to that would be, if I had to choose one, I'd choose quality, but you definitely need to make sure that you have more and you get more and that you get some negative ones. You do want to get critical reviews because that gives you the opportunity to show strong opinion, right? And reply to people. Um, I obviously have reviews for Proofworth on Proofworth, and that's not effective because everybody knows I could do what I want with those. But I've actually been going out and reaching out to people and like, hey, can you leave a review with critical feedback on it? Because I want to be able to show people the value that that can have, because I think that's very important. So yeah, long answer to a short question, but that's how I think about it.
That makes a lot of sense. And then moving on to a completely different concept,
Let's do
kinda.
it.
You talked about status with William Renner on the School magazine a while ago. I was thinking how and if at all that plays into reviews.
Uh, The Status Game by best-selling author Will Storr. I reference it so much. Um, and I can summarize the entire book for you here. Or my dog keeps trying to open my window here. Um, when Status when it comes to reviews is an interesting game for sure, because when you have hundreds of high quality reviews, what does that give prospective members the idea of? Oh, this person is legit, right? This is a paid group. They have, dozens, if not hundreds of reviews. Uh, they must be important, successful, blah, blah, blah. Um, your page has 0 reviews, right? I would think, "Oh, well, either they're not paying attention to this," which is fine, um, or maybe they're not as established, and they don't have as many people that they can reference and pull from. So then and both of those things have pros and cons, so it's not like, you could use both to their advantage. But, for example, just a simple thing that I use in my day to day is like we're gonna go try a new restaurant. Um, I actively like there's restaurants out here that have 5 stars and 14 reviews. And I'm like, we actively went to a 4.2 star restaurant because it had 800 reviews. 4.2 is not 5, but 800 is not, 13 or whatever. Sub 20 reviews. So to me, that said, okay, this restaurant has been around for a long time. They're definitely higher status, right? Because they've got a significant amount more. Yes, their rating is less, but like the volume of that is much more. Um, and I think about status all the time, even if it's not directly about like the act of what is their status.
Mhm.
You have to think about that. I mean, that plays into every aspect of our lives. Like we said in the very beginning, we're not playing a solo game. We're not just here by ourselves on this planet. So
Society.
everything we're in a society. Everything matters. So I would say that there's a lot of ways that this can be shaped. And I
Mhm.
think a big one, again, to harp on this because I think this is so important, is if you have reviews with negative feedback and you reply to those, that to me implies high status because I think, oh, integrity or oh, they're not afraid or, like I see a restaurant with bad reviews and I see the owner come in and they reply with grace, right? I've seen people they reply to all their bad reviews and they're like, hey, F you, screw this, like, okay, that's not the best thing. I mean, sometimes, somebody maybe deserves to be to be scorned, but I wouldn't say that's true often enough. So there's a lot the nuance of this, I guess the answer is that it runs deep. Status runs deep, especially when it comes to reviews and testimonials.
Yeah, and I think a lot of what you touched on was the quality versus quantity as well, right? Kind of going back to that conversation. And you manage millions in campaigns, I'm pretty sure, at Monday.com. So I was
Yes.
wondering your opinions on the new growth tab, aka the analytics for Skool, and how people can use it.
I mean, we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars of our own money building internal tools to be able to get even a fraction of the power. Uh, and from what I've seen, it looks legit and trustworthy as well, which is very hard to do. Very, very hard to do. So again, another massive shout out to the Skool team because like the quality is bananas. But the best thing that you can use this for is to actually give you behavior change, right? Because I get lots of traffic, but I see that, the conversion rate on said traffic varies quite a bit. And so you have to evaluate and say, okay, where's this traffic coming from? What's the conversion rate of this traffic, right? Proofworth isn't a mechanism for just getting customers on autopilot yet. I certainly want that to be the case, but we're still new and growing as well. But Skool now 6 years into this journey is starting to become its own source of discovery. So you could, in theory, have a group and get customers um, through just Skool itself. And now the growth tab actually shows you exactly where you need to be spending your time. I'm a big, big proponent and believer that people should not just leverage Skool. I think it makes it worse for everybody, personally, if we just use Skool because it goes into that same concept that we talked about with churn and everything else. There needs to be new, fresh blood in the ecosystem. But yeah, I can't say enough good things about it. Like it's a really really powerful tool, and the fact that they give it to you for 99 a month is crazy. Like again, we were spending so much money trying to understand the results of our efforts, and it's literally baked into Skool. So from a corporate background experience, as somebody who had to deal with UTM parameters and dealing with different campaign budgets and initiatives. Like we did one. I have screenshots of it. Um, I flew into New York and we managed a campaign where we were working with the Met Gala because the Met Gala was using Monday to manage all their stuff, and we spent probably 500 grand on just the production of that budget, not to mention then understanding as we rolled it out, made ads, they published content, they published social media. Tracking all that stuff was a nightmare. And that was 5 years ago. And now we just have this. Like it's crazy.
Just have a
It's
Skool committee instead.
yeah. I mean straight up. That's it's I don't think yeah, I feel like I'm saying this all the time, but like managing affiliates for taxes, complete nightmare. And with Skool, you don't even have to think about it. So, yeah, I'm a big fan. I'm pretty bullish on Skool. But yeah, the growth tab is nuts. It is a business enterprise analytics tool for, you know, literally no more money. You were
Right.
already paying $99 a month for the pro plan. It's crazy. And when I started on Skool, I didn't have a group for probably like 6 6 to 8 months almost.
Mhm.
And I was paying back then there was no hobby plan. The calendar feature just came out. But being a part of Schoolers was so valuable that I was still happy to pay $99 a month for that. Um, and I attribute a lot of my own knowledge and, current like happiness to the fact that I was able to spend so much time learning and being around those people and getting to talk to Sam and Kirby and, all this other stuff. Anyway, long story short, school rocks.
Last question. Biggest hot take about community.
I think community is an inconvenience for everybody. Is that hot enough?
I think that's pretty hot.
Yeah. Because think about it. Um, I've seen this, I've experienced this, you probably have too. But there are a lot of people who are, school is a network effect based business wherein people can't you even mentioned it in the beginning, right? Where do people discover you? They see you on your profile, they click on your group, they join, they call. That's literally your livelihood. And it's entirely happening through the school ecosystem unless they discover you through YouTube or something else, right? But generally, school is a very important piece of the puzzle. And, thinking about how to get somebody to join a community and commit is naturally an inconvenient aspect for them. So what does that mean? Well, they could just join and then never do anything, but then they're not really part of a community, are they? But if they join, they come back, they give feedback, they interact, they take the course, they do the steps, they actually achieve something, they share the win, they help other people. What is required of all of those things? It's
Time.
effort. It's hard. It's not easy. And, I have people that have left my community even after I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna give you my product," my initial launch people. I was like, "Hey, if you join between like these couple of weeks when I launch, I'll give you the product to try out and you could use it and I'll help you get out. I'll do all these things for you." Right. And even then people would still leave and they're like, "I'm in too many communities. I'm doing too much. I can't commit." Um, and that's fine. That makes sense. That's totally okay. But community is naturally an inconvenience. So you need to understand and take advantage of that fact. Not about like focus on me and do nothing else, but understanding like how can you make this as frictionless as possible while still understanding that there is a lot of it. And if the transformation is truly crazy enough and if the journey is worthwhile enough, that people are going to overcome that inconvenience and be a good member and help you maintain and grow that community. I also like another kind of thing that this stems from is that I don't think people ever look for community. Another hot take. I don't think people crave community, right? Um, I think that there is, well, from what I have seen, what I have measured, is that there is some sort of utility that people are looking for. Community is kind of a trap, right? And I've seen this, by the way. I've experimented with this. Like, people just don't go looking for a community. They have a problem and they want a solution. And what does that usually come in the form of? Some sort of utility to do that. Um, people just want to eat, bacon and fried chicken, right? But if you just say, "Hey, I'll give you some of that," but then the really good stuff is this broccoli wrapped bacon or, this tempura fried vegetable, right? Whatever, right? But like to use the example, it's like you got to sell them what they want, but then you have to give them what they need. That's kind of the classic age old idiom. I think community is the same thing. People don't necessarily know that they want community. They don't know or realize that that's the valuable thing. Um, but they then come in and realize, oh, community could be the solution. But then they have to overcome the fact that community is inconvenient. So communities really have it hard, honestly. We in this business have a very hard time. But that's why when you have a great customer journey and you actually have a great product or service as part of your community and you actually give people amazing transformation, right? Like these people will be your friends. They will change your life. You'll go hang out with them in person. Next time we're going to hang out together, we got to go climb a tree, right? Like that's the thing. I never would have met you had it not been for school. So Yeah, those are my 2 hot takes. And again, I'm not just, like, making this stuff up. I thought this originally, but, like, when I see people coming into Proveworth, they're not typing in blah, blah, blah community. They're typing in things like, "How do I get my sourdough starter to actually propagate and make better bread?" And then they're like, "Oh, wait, a community of bakers? Amazing." That's what I'm seeing.
Join for the product, stay for the people.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Thank you, Mr. Matthew Burns.
It's an absolute pleasure, man, and an honor.